Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today for this webcast where we will be talking about a case study from Cox Automotive on modernizing their client mastering and data quality initiatives within their organization. Harnessing the power of data is absolutely pivotal in today's age for driving digital transformation. The important thing is that you guys didn't join this webcast to listen to me. But just a quick introduction, my name is Pete Loebser. I'm the Senior Vice President and Global Head of Marketing at Paxata. And for the rest of this session, I'm going to be joined by a wonderful group of experts on data and Paxata from Cox Automotive. Sarah Baker is the Data Quality Manager in Client Data Management and Analytics. James Benanati, a Senior Data Quality Analyst, and Byron Hernandez is a Senior Data Analyst within the Cox organization. So without further ado, I'm going to be handing over to Sarah, who will kick us off and walk us through their use case. Sarah, thank you for joining, and I appreciate you guys taking the time.
Yes, happy to join. So I'm going to just kick off by telling you a little bit about Cox Automotive and what we do. You might not have heard our name, but we actually have a number of brands. You might recognize Autotrader.com, Kelley Blue Book. Those are both our most recognizable brands. Mannheim is also an auction company. We actually engage in all aspects of a dealership, from inventory, marketing, sales, service, all the way to operations. So we are striving to bridge the gap between consumers, manufacturers, dealers, and lenders at every stage in the automotive experience. So that's really a view of Cox Automotive. You can see that we have grown quite a bit through acquisitions. This is really just a view of the way that we kind of manage ourselves by a number of different operational customer masters. And so they all view each other a little bit differently sometimes. As you can imagine, the customers who attend auctions might be a little different than those who are listing cars on Autotrader. Sometimes they're smaller customers. And so Mannheim might view its customer base a little bit differently than Autotrader, and then the same with DealerTrack and NextGear. And so our challenge is that we really have to understand our customers across all brands. And so that's the big challenge here. So it's to bring together that single view of our customer and understand our customers across all brands. We'll often need to kind of merge our customer records across all these different brands into that top level. And so when we go to where we are coming from is really from the data quality program. We have a robust data quality program around our customer master data. And our goal, or our scope for this, is centered around ensuring that the data is fit for use across Cox Automotive business processes, from core operations to analytics and decision making. We must have the ability to accurately merge data from these disparate sources to drive business value. And so when we focus on that, I think that's best just to explain, like I said, where we came from is from the Autotrader world. And so we did this on a smaller scale very successfully. And I'll show you a little bit about how we did that from the framework that we put together and how we have approached that through the years. So when we look at this kind of just identifies really the approach that we've taken. And so we identify exactly what we're talking about across all these disparate systems and sources. We have to build that common understanding of data quality measures and attributes for customers. The next two steps is the main challenge once we scaled to this across all of our brands. And across Mannheim and these larger, customer master sources, measuring and monitoring these and identifying discrepancies, and then being able to profile and analyze was a very big challenge that we had as we tried to scale. And that's really something that Paxata helped us significantly make changes and be able to just track on a consistent basis. Not only resolving issues, but identifying root causes, identifying and fixing them. So closing that gap wherever it exists. And this is really just that continuous improvement, showing the continuous improvement cycle, even with things that we've already defined and already already have that we consider operationalized from a data quality and data management standpoint. We're always improving them and refining what our standards are. And I'll pass it over to Jim, tell you about the challenges that we experienced.
Okay, thanks. Briefly, Sarah mentioned, I'll kind of talk about challenges that we've had looking at our client master data prior to using Paxata. The first one is the previous tools we're using. We've run into limitations there. Primarily Excel and Access, but there's also other limitations, or limitations with other tools, I should say. With Excel, there's the obvious limitation of just record size, where Excel only lets you have a certain number of records per sheet. And, when we're getting into more complex data with larger data systems across a master where you're looking across data point across multiple systems, and if you're trying to do comparisons across there, it's easy for the data to grow quite quickly. So you're either hitting that limit where you can't put all the data into a single source, or you're getting close. And if you're not hitting the data, then if you try to manipulate the data in one way, such as a VLOOKUP or maybe some other macro, it's taking so much time that basically you can't run the data, or it's taking an extreme amount of time to run the data. So previously we could take days, if not a week or two, to create a report. At that point, the data starts to become stale. And once you hand it off to a data steward to work, if they don't have the ability to work it right then you're adding to the staleness of data. You can't have kind of a midpoint check-in. So if you want to see, somebody who's been working in the data for a little bit and they want to have the data refresh, that becomes a big chore because it's taking so long because of the tools. So, you'd like to have data appear a little bit more frequently, and really that would allow collaboration among the team, because you could have some back and forth. You'd be able to have the checkpoints in there. Previously, if we were running into issues with some of the tools, obvious one way to kind of get around that was to involve IT, but that involves time and expense. And once you got any sort of report created from IT, it was fairly rigid. So if you needed to change that data, say to look at a specific OEM, like a dealer, manufacturer such as Honda, or if you're wanting to only look at a certain region of the country, like the Southeast, you didn't really have that flexibility of quickly pivoting to look at one set of data to another. Paxata has given us that ability. Also, with Paxata, we're able to augment our data. So Sarah previously was showing all the data sources merging into client master data. We're able to add to that. So we're able to add certain data points that are what we think are key for us to have right off the bat, and when we hand that off to a data steward, rather than having something that needs to be derived after the fact, after we hand a report to them. And the next slide's kind of going to talk a little bit about some of the common data discrepancies. You'll see on the far right, we have source specific discrepancies that could appear at any source that you have, but some of the other ones appear a little bit more when you're merging different sources together. So you can, of course, have address discrepancies, whether it's a completeness issue or just simple discrepancies across different systems where street may be spelled out from one to another, or the same address may have multiple names. It may be using a long name versus just a route number or something for another one. Kind of how to put all those together to get that single view of your customer. Those kind of lead to the unmerged discrepancies, where you have at least potential issues where you think the clients were merged automatically, perhaps in not the correct way. So when you're trying to get down to the single view, these could be issues where the ID you're looking at might not be reported the same. So, dealer A could be in source 1 and 2, but dealer B is in source 3, but really they're representing the same dealer on the master system, but you don't see them the same because they should be actually merged together. And that kind of leads into a little bit of the next slide, where previously we talked about the need to give the data to the data stewards in a way where they would need it. So you've got all these data sources merging into single master, but they're all representing different data. So when we're giving it to the data stewards, we want to make sure that we're only giving them what's actually matched. And also, really on the far right there, the target, it's matches, but it's also the most valuable. So when you're getting into large data sources, you could potentially run across a high multitude of errors, but unless if you have unlimited resources, it might be hard to kind of correct everything at one time. So we're able to sort through issues and get the most valuable to the data stewards to work. And that value could be based on revenue or type of dealer, or as I said before, location. And we're able to, with Paxata, switch that around fairly quickly. So if we send off a targeted match queue to a data steward and they're able to work that, or if an executive comes on later on and says, well, we really need to focus on BMW because we've had talks with them and we want to make sure that data is rock solid, then we're able to quickly switch with our Paxata reporting. And with that, I'll hand off to Byron to talk a little bit more about that.
Thank you, Jim. Yes, so in order for us to get to that target match queue that Jim just described, when we're looking at the different tools that we've used previously, and we can see on the slide that we've gone from a set of different tools and actually sideload different tools into Paxata. We had different tools that helped us from data extraction to data transfer to cleansing, profiling, processing, and finally exporting that data into either a dashboarding tool or a Excel format in order for them to be worked. Now, with Paxata, we've been able to actually replace the majority of those tools. Paxata takes care of data from data extraction all the way through exporting the data into a final state that a steward can work from, or actually a Tableau or Click dashboard or any other dashboarding tool. So with that in mind, we then look at not only the fact that we've replaced different tools, but in the next slide, we will actually see one of the main benefits that we've gained is time, which is very valuable. And one of the things that we look at first is we were spending a lot of time, manual time. Somebody had to either touch the data or actually be involved as part of the process. And we can look at one of the data quality discrepancy processes that we ran. Any time that we needed to run any specific data discrepancy, it would take us about 95 minutes. We have the breakdown there. Again, this goes from data extraction all the way to the final process. And with Paxata, it actually is 0 minutes in time, but we actually add 10 minutes if any other manipulations need to happen after the data has been finalized by Paxata. So the gain of time is something that we've been able to immediately come across. Additionally, we were also able to come across another benefit that was very helpful when it comes to consistency and availability of the data. We were running some of the reports we only run either on a monthly basis or on a weekly basis. And as Jim mentioned, the problem with that was that at some points you can't get to a report, or by the time you look at the report, it's stale. So being able to now with Paxata run most of those reports on a daily or bi-weekly basis, it's a huge advantage because it allows for not only trending monitoring, but also more accurate and more up-to-date data. We're also, with that daily automation, we've also actually started to automate a process that aggregates that data over time, which lets the data quality team look at the data over a period of a specific time and see how trends are looking and see where the discrepancies are. And we're no longer limited by either Access or Excel in that specific part, because if in the past we wanted to look at it over time, we would have to involve one of the other tools and actually aggregate that data manually. But now we've been able to automate it and have it available for them. There was also a huge room for error since the data was being touched by either humans or different processes along the way. You could always make a mistake, and it would just change the quality of the data itself. So reducing the human interaction with the data has actually limited or eliminated that room for error, providing more consistent data. Because once we set up the automated processes in Paxata, we run the exact same process on the data on a daily basis or weekly or monthly basis, but we know that it's going to run in the same consistent manner. And Jim mentioned one of the other benefits that we came across is as the data grew, we were limited either by Excel row limits or file size or even computing resources that were limited as on either the amount of data that we could run at once or the number of attributes that we could consider when we were looking at a set of data. And that was actually important because with Paxata, we're not bound by those, and we've actually been able not only to augment the customer master for different processes, but we've actually looked and involved more attributes to make better decisions and to distribute more accurate or targeted lists. And that again is only possible inside of Paxata because we're not limited to either a row or column size. And with that in mind, we can look at one of the data quality discrepancies on the next slide. Jim mentioned the potential merges or unmerges, which comes from us being able to identify across different customer masters the same customer, the same dealer. Can we actually look at that dealer across the company? And we have either potential merges where we could have identified two records that need to be represented as one, or we actually are representing two different dealers as one and we need to separate them. All of that has been basically made possible inside of Paxata because we've actually created our own cleansing and the standards that we look at based on either name or address, and we can either involve or exclude other attributes like nameplates or additional attributes that help Paxata make better decisions when it's looking at matching two different records. And those associations are created inside of Paxata on a daily or weekly basis, and then we can actually trend those, or we can help add that data into the augmented customer master that we described before, and it can be analyzed or it can be added to other reports downstream. And with that, the other benefit that we found is collaboration, which it brings us back to the final set of the slides that we have here for us, because not only can we augment the data, but now once I create a data set inside of Paxata, we share it amongst the team, and Jim can go in and either add data to that or just build subsets of that data to create different workflows or share that data in a different way. And I'll pass it back to Jim to just describe that final process.
Yeah, so basically kind of as we mentioned earlier, we're taking in the data sources. We're creating a number of reports that were being sent out to data stewards to work, and we're able to customize those on a pretty granular level if we need to. We're also able to take that same data and feed that into dashboards for executives to use. I think we have pictured here Tableau, but it also works well with Click and a number of other dashboarding tools. So it's a solution that's being used by people on different levels for different reasons. Kind of a complete flow of information there. So if there's I think maybe a wrap up that you have, or if there's any other questions, we could take those.
Okay, Jim, thank you so much. So let me quickly just run through a couple of slides here on the Paxata side, just to kind of put some of the where Paxata fits in. As a company, we were founded some 7 years ago. We're based in Redwood City. We've got offices in various parts of the world. And we focus solely on building data platforms to help enterprises accelerate the access to data, that sort of democratization of data. If you look at the bottom left, we've been pretty fortunate in that we've been recognized by numerous analyst organizations like Forrester in a number of their waves. The wave for data preparation. There's also the wave for big data fabrics that we have shown in. And really what we're aiming at solving from a problem point of view is really to address that sort of traditional imbalance of business needing data, needing more and faster access to data, versus IT, which obviously have a ton on their plate. And you have this sort of ask, and then there's a delay when IT can provide that information back. And the typical tools that we have deployed to manage data in our organizations are aimed at the guys on the left-hand side. It's technical products, and the Cox team have shared with you some of the products that they have been using for scripting, for extracting, for transforming data. So the way that Paxata has gone about this is to build a platform that is aimed at empowering business people, business analysts directly. And we empower them to visually interact with the data and to shape and prepare the data for whatever purpose they have. So the first thing is really it's business users, self-service, so data analysts, business analysts. You don't need to be a developer with deep coding experience. The business understands the data, and so we provide a visual and an interactive experience for them. So much like Excel, you will look at the data. One of the important things that we do also is to assist when the business people are working with the data. There are all kinds of ways, and you've seen some of the things that Byron mentioned about cluster and edit, meaning how do I identify two possible dealers or customers that could be the same customer, whether it be similar addresses or similar spelled businesses, with maybe some abbreviations or full stops and things like that in the word. So intelligence is important. We utilize AI and all kinds of algorithmic intelligence to make recommendations and provide automation. Runs in the cloud across any multi-cloud hybrid environment. And the other one is important to provide scale and governance and collaboration. One of the limitations we see quite often with desktop approaches to data preparation, and Excel is one of the problem areas, is it's limited to a number of rows. So you've seen some of the examples that Byron had there, and in some of the cases they work with more than 1 million rows. In some of the cases they work with up to 30 million rows of data. But in this fashion, we can then empower the business to get to the data by themselves. And it's similar to the diagram that the team had shown us. I mean, there are data sources, and it doesn't matter whether this is a data lake, it's an application, it's a data file, it's a sensor JSON files that you want to bring into the platform. We ingest that, we profile the data, meaning get deep understanding what is in that data, what does it look like, what's the shape of the data, are there outliers? And then you start the work of preparation. So you can explore, you can validate, you can combine data sets, You can remove duplicates. You can cluster and edit. In other words, if there are multiple spellings of similar constructs, it could be then an indication of the same dealer or same customer. You can do that sort of cleanup and cluster them together in a single value. And then lastly, it's not just limited with you publishing a data set. You can actually schedule and automate this and collaborate with the rest of your environment. And the outputs of this go wherever you want. It can go back into a BI tool. Some of it can go into other applications that you might have. I touched very briefly about recognition. We're very, very proud of Paxata being recognized in the big data fabric, as well as the data preparation solutions. And we're proud that we're the only vendor that actually managed to show up in the leaders group within both of these environments. If you want to try Paxata for yourself, please go ahead to paxata.com/get started. And I've got a couple of questions coming from the audience for the team on the Cox side, Cox Automotive side. This is, if I was going to start, maybe it's like I look at this and say that, like, yeah, I can see we have a lot of the traditional tools in our environment, and we are looking to do self-service. We want to get into an initiative like this. How do you guys start? I mean, is this a sort of big bang project? Where do you guys start? What kind of advice would you give to the audience to kick off an initiative like this in your own organization?
Sure. That's a great question. I think that's one of the hardest parts, is figuring out exactly really where to get started. And what I would recommend, what I think we would recommend, is really starting with something, to start with one of the biggest challenges you're having right now. One of the things that we did is we actually was helpful for us. We had the Paxata group come in and kind of spend a day with us, and we were able to very easily bring our data into Paxata so that they could kind of work with our actual data, and we just kind of worked through one of our big challenges that we were having, where it just took, like Byron and Jim were showing, it took a long time, it took a very long time to prep this data, and we had challenges with it being consistent, but every time we prepped it. And so what we did is we just had them kind of work through that with us, show us exactly how to do it and how you would configure that report in Paxata. And then they were able to work with us to figure out exactly how frequently we needed it to be done. We can schedule these reports. We have many that we schedule on a daily basis, but we started out just really with one single use case, which was just our biggest challenge that took the longest time to prep and longest time to put together. And that was extremely helpful for us because we were able to get some value from that immediately.
So, thank you. Byron, Jim, anything you guys want to add?
I think from the user perspective, once we got Paxata, there's certainly a learning curve, I would say, but it's just like Sarah said, it's trying to pick a specific use case and start to work from it, and you'll start to see the advantages immediately. But it's important to get one use case, trying to see what you're trying to accomplish and get in Paxata, and also help people understand that the benefits are going to come in the fashion that we describe them. So we were not trying to replace the customer master that we currently have with Paxata. We were trying to augment it, or when it comes to IT, we were also able to save them time because we can do what-if analysis or additional changes inside of Paxata before we actually request or involve IT in it. So we can test different changes before involving IT time, and they don't have to productionalize anything until we tested it. And we used also Paxata as a test environment for different things, or what-if analysis, or different steps. And like I said, from a user perspective, is just trying to get in Paxata and start to see yourself what benefits can you get from it.
Yeah, and I guess piggybacking on both of the other comments, Paxata offered to come out and show us, and those walkthroughs are helpful. As Byron mentioned, there's a learning curve, but I also thought it was most helpful just to kind of get in the tool, and it's something where you don't necessarily need that assistance that they offer to kind of get you up and going, because if you just spend a little bit of time in it and start realizing what the tools kind of can do on your own, you can kind of go from that initial use case and start to see all the different benefits it can offer. We're starting to take our historical data and starting to that we have in Paxata already, and starting to trend it out some more to use it even more. So the more time you spend in it, the more ways you can find it to be helpful for you.
Cool. Jim, thank you so much. And in the process, you guys have actually managed to answer my follow-up question, which was going to be about the sort of individual experience for people getting going. I think the other important thing that you guys just mentioned is that collaborative work between IT and business. This is not something that you want to implement, and it's us versus them. I think this is, what you guys rightly touch on, is when the organizational parts can collaborate and work together and see the benefit both sides. I think that's actually a fantastic thing. So that's bringing us to the end of the time available to us. I would like to thank the team from Cox Automotive for joining me, and thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. And we'll stop here. Thank you so much.